Have you ever tried to have a serious conversation, but you feel like the other person is really zoned out, tuned out, and not paying attention to you? This happens particularly with kids and teens, right? Or have you ever been involved in a conversation where you are the one who can't seem to focus on the conversation? Well, today I'm going to share with you the 6 main things that could be blocking your ability to communicate. Stick around. Hi, I'm Marcia Mar, and I'm here to empower you with the tools to help you design a family set for success. And today we're going to talk about the 6 things that could be blocking your communication with your family, with your kids, even with coworkers and other people around you. If you can manage to control and make these 6 things optimal, your communications will immediately improve. And to help us remember what these things are, think of the acronym STATIC, the word static. We're going to use that as our guideline as we dive into the 6 things. The first letter in STATIC is S, and S for us stands for sightlines. So sometimes we are in a space where we're trying to have a conversation, but there's a lot going on in the background. There's people walking around, there might be cute little animals running, there might be construction at the end behind us or something. So before you select the spot where you're going to have the conversation, look at the sidelines. Make sure there is very little, if anything, that could be a distraction for you or for the other person, because that's when you end up in this kind of conversation where you're talking to someone and their eyes are going like this all over the place. Has that ever happened to you? Or where you're talking to someone and suddenly you feel your gaze move away from the conversation. So make sure that you examine your sidelines, and that is the first one. T, the first T stands for thoughts and perceptions. So before entering a conversation, we all have a preconceived idea of what the conversation is going to look like. Try to examine those thoughts. Make sure that you're not coming in anticipating that things are going to work out a specific way, because that might throw you off if the person responds differently. Make sure that your perception of what the conversation is going to look like is not colored by previous conversations. And make sure that you're coming in with a clear idea of what it is that you want out of the conversation. A stands for assumptions. We get into a lot of trouble when we assume anything. We cannot get into other people's minds, no matter how hard we try, and we continuously do this. So by assumptions, what I mean is, are you anticipating the person's reaction? Are you trying to guess what they're going to say? Are you coming in with an assumed understanding of what they're feeling before you even ask them, or what they're thinking? We do this a lot, especially when we are trying to deal with sensitive subjects, where we assume the other person feels a certain way about them, or we assume that they're going to react a certain way, or we assume that they believe a certain thing without ever having asked them. So you cannot really know what is in the other person's mind until you have the conversation. So check those assumptions and make sure you come in there without any preconceived ideas of what the other person is thinking, feeling, or understanding. The second T stands for technology. We already talked about sidelines, but the biggest distraction in our world are all these devices. So make sure that your devices are away, as far from you as possible. If you must have them close by, make sure they're muted, and make sure that you're not checking to see if the phone is ringing or if there are messages or notifications, because that sends the message that you're not really interested in the conversation you're having. As for the other person, ask if they would be willing to mute and put away their devices, and make sure that there are no TVs on, no radios blasting, nothing that could take the focus away from this important conversation that you're trying to have. I stands for intent. For important conversations, deep, meaningful ones, you should always have an end goal. What is it that you want out of this conversation? Do you want to clarify misunderstanding? Do you want to set clear expectations? Do you want to make sure you and the other person are on the same page about an important topic? Do you want to make sure you're sharing the same purposes in an assignment or a task that you are endeavoring in together? What is the final goal? And not only that, but make sure that you are coming in with a positive intent and feeling that the other person can bring a positive intent as well. So don't go in there expecting negative reactions. Don't go in there ready to attack or to condemn or to impose your point of view. Go in there knowing that the whole purpose of conversation is to exchange meaning, to make sure that you and the other person can fully understand one another and where you're coming from. So try to get away from this, what is it going to say, what is he or she going to say, how can I respond back, this tennis match type of interaction, and go with the full intent of understanding and believing that everybody in the conversation ultimately wants good, positive, sound things for everybody's benefit. So far we've talked about the top 5 things that can disturb our important conversations. Before we dive into the 6th one though, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel and make sure that you go through the other videos and check all the information out. I put in new content at least twice a week where I share with you some strategies, tools, and tips to help you design a family that is set for success. And the C, the final letter in static, stands for context. What do I mean by this? There's 2 elements to every conversation, and if you want to know more about this, there's a wonderful book called Crucial Conversations that you can check out. But there's 2 elements to every dialogue and every conversation. One is the content, and the other one is the context. And we're usually pretty aware of the content because they are the words we're saying. And although we've talked before, and we will talk again about how what we say is not necessarily what is understood, there is also this really important element that is the context of what we're saying and how it's being said and perceived. So to look at context, the main thing you want to be aware of is whether the other person is giving you any signs of starting to feel uncomfortable or unsafe, or whether you yourself are exhibiting any signs of becoming uncomfortable or feeling unsafe in the conversation. Because if either of those things happen, you are going to revert into either silence or attack violence, right? So you or the other person might either one or both fall into this pattern. So be aware, is the person starting to get all closed off? Is the person increasing the pitch of their voice, or are you? Do you find yourself suddenly leaning forward like you're ready to pounce on the person? Or is the other person doing that, right, on the other end? So become more aware of the context of everything that's going on as part of the conversation that is not necessarily the words that are being said, but the way in which they are being presented. If the other person suddenly clamps up and stops talking, they're probably not feeling very safe. If the other person starts attacking, they're probably feeling kind of uncomfortable with the way everything is going, with the way everything is being said, or the way the conversation, the shape the conversation is taking. So make sure that you create this awareness and ask yourself throughout the conversation, are we still engaged? Are both of us still listening? Is this still a back and forth where we are both communicating? Am I being able to listen? And does the other person seem to be listening to me? If not, then it's time to shift some of the language, or maybe even take a little time out and restart the conversation at a later time when the context is better. Again, the next time you need to have an important conversation, especially if you're talking to someone who tends to clam up or who tends to get a little oversensitive in conversations, remember the letters for the word static. Check your sidelines, examine your thoughts and your perceptions, make sure that your assumptions are checked and evaluated and maybe even pushed to the side. Check for any technology that might become a distraction. Come in with a positive intent and a definite goal, and make sure that you are constantly aware of the context so you can make the conversation safe and comfortable for everybody involved. Thank you for spending this time with me. Again, I'm Marcy Amaro. And before we say goodbye, I want to invite you to comment down below if you have ever experienced a situation in which one of these 6 elements of static has gotten in the way, and now in retrospect, you know what was going on in the conversation. Or maybe something that you know distracts you from having positive conversations. Again, make sure to subscribe, share this with anybody who you think might benefit from it, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you for your time.